All right, welcome everybody. So today we're going to talk about budgeting hacks. It's the beginning of the year, talking about trying to make new starts, fresh beginnings. Maybe you've tried budgeting before. Maybe you're just looking for some tricks and hacks. So whatever you do or you're planning to do with a budget, we have to keep in mind that there are 5 elements that any budget you have, no matter what type of budget that you do. It's not just numbers scribbled on a piece of paper and items, or categories that you have on your app. It has to have these 5 key elements in order to really, for you to be successful and have a sound budget. So the first thing is income. In order for it to be successful, you have to understand exactly how much money you're bringing home every month. So your net income. And that's after taxes, after anything's taken out, for deductions, if you have premiums being taken out or FSA or anything like that, you have to make sure you understand what's actually your take-home pay that you get to spend that month. Because you have to know, if you're doing a monthly budget, you have to know exactly the dollar amount that you have to work with. Number 2 is expenses. If you've never done a budget before, you might have to go back to your bank statements or look at your, most of us do banking now on apps or your credit cards, and look and see what are you spending. Now, when I say not sure what you're spending, most of us know what our fixed expenses are, the ones that are the same every month. For example, if you have a car payment or rent or mortgage or your cell phone bill. Is anyone else hearing that? Okay, I was hearing an echo. Anyway, so if you're not sure about what we call discretionary expenses, like your groceries or going out to eat, or maybe your utilities, it's a good idea to look and see, have a general idea of what you plan to spend in each category. And then you have to set yourself some limits. So for example, when I first moved to Utah, I didn't know what my utility expenses were going to be. So I made an estimate, and now I've been here a year. So I looked at the last year and said, okay, this is on average what I spent on electricity or gas or whatnot. And then that gives me a better opportunity to really have a more specific limit for the expense. Or if you want to impose upon yourself a limit for expense, like for example, for me, it's clothing. I have a certain amount that I set that I don't want to go over in any given month. And then a budget is not useful to you or to anybody if you can't track or monitor your spending. It doesn't serve any purpose to you if it's not a good document, if they're not realistic numbers. So it's really important that you're tracking it throughout. Say you, just to make it simple, you said you were going to spend $100 on your groceries. You're in week 1 and you've already spent $75. So that's either okay, whoa, I need to, limit my spending, or you say, wow, I really didn't set a realistic limit for this expense. Because if you've never tracked expenses before, if you've never done a budget, sometimes it's hard to know what your categories, what you should set for each of those categories. So it's really important at the end that you track and see, like, okay, were these good estimates or not? Do I need to go back and reevaluate this? And that's why it's important at the very end that you review it and you evaluate it and you say, okay, was this a good budget? Did this work for me? It might take a few months of doing a budget or trying to find different ways of doing a budget, either paper, a spreadsheet, an app. There's no one right way to do it. It's about finding what works for you, because if it works for you, then you're going to be more likely to stick to it. So those are the 5 elements of any budget. And then we're going to move on, and Jeremy is going to jump in and talk about cash flow.
Yes. So cash flow is really, when you create a cash flow budget is what we want to call it. It allows you to match the timing of your income with the timing of your expenses. This is how most people get frustrated with when they think about budgeting. They would say, oh, I budgeted for this, but then at the end of the month, I still don't have enough. It's like, it's not working for me. This is one of, the pain points of budgeting, because when you think, okay, I have the money and then I have my expenses and I write it down or I have it in the app or whatever, but it's not working for me. Well, this is what one thing that you can do to make sure that you're not short at the end of the month or at the end of the week. You match the timing of your income with the timing of your expenses. So a cash flow budget is an estimate of all cash received and all cash expenditures that are expected to occur during a certain time period. So it helps you plan out the cash flow um, and have some left over for savings or other goals. It can help you figure out how to best allocate your income between savings and spending, focusing on long-term finances. And the goal is to have more money coming in than is going out. If your net cash flow is negative, this means you're spending beyond what you earn, and that's going to be a problem. If you find yourself in this situation, then you have to start looking at ways to reduce your expenses or spread out your expenses so that they are timed with the flow of your income, so that when the income comes in, you know exactly where. You tell the money where it goes instead of the money telling you how it, how things should go. So how does cash flow differ from a budget? You might think, well, that's just another fancy term for a budget. Well, a cash flow is a written plan of how and when. That's the key there, is when you plan to spend the money. A budget only covers what you plan to spend. So it's a list, okay, this amount of money goes here, this amount of money goes there. But with a cash flow budget, there's a when. So you know exactly when that money is going to be spent, so that if you need to spread it out, you are able to do so. Okay, so going back to the elements of a budget that Vincenzo was talking about earlier, cash flow budgeting allows you to see exactly how much you can spend from week to week based on your income. So there's the time element there. And it addresses all the other elements, such as, you are able to track your expenses. You can set your expense limits for specific weeks so that you don't come up short. And you're also able to evaluate and review your budget from week to week, month to month, as you go along. So here's an example of what a cash flow budget would look like. We'll send you a form fillable copy of this so that you can practice on your own. But here's what it's going to look like. See, here's your categories. If you have 2 jobs, or each member of your family has a job and each of you have income coming in, or maybe you're receiving housing subsidy, or you're receiving benefits, those kinds of things. Everything is that you receive in the form of money to be spent should be added in this category. But first, you start up, how much do you have at the beginning of the month? Say, check your bank account if you do have a bank account. If you don't have a bank account, how much do you have on hand at the beginning of the month? Say you have $300, or $500 is what you start with, and then you start adding here, okay, your income from week to week. Okay, and if that second job you get paid every 2 weeks, then or the 1st and the 15th, then that's where you put this here. Week 1, I get the money from job 1, and then I get paid again on week 3. So that's how you put those amounts on there. And then here, down here, you list down all your expenses. Okay, and look at your statements. When are these things due? If you're finding that a lot of your bills are due on the 1st, or the way you're spending your money is always the 1st week, then maybe you can start rethinking that, because that's the idea behind cash flow budget. Like I said, you time the spending with the influx of money, and then you have your ending weekly balance, which you will then carry forward over here to week 2, and you repeat those steps all over again. So this is an example, which is interesting because you see here, every other week, this couple, Maria and Dan, they come up short, right? So we'll discuss that in a little bit. What are you gonna do if you do this cash flow budget and you see that you're coming up short from one week to the other? Okay, so this is how it works. Like I said earlier, you determine your starting balance for the month, list the amounts that you received during week one, add up your total income for week one to your current balance, then list all your expenses for week one, subtract those from week one total income, and then forward that ending weekly balance to the following week and repeat steps 1 to 5. Okay. So Vincenzo is now going to talk about one thing you can do if you're seeing your cash flow budget. Oh, I'm coming up short on this week. Where can I adjust? What can I do to make that work?
Okay, so there's one method that's called, if you've heard of it before, it's called the step down principle. So where the cash flow budget is going to show you where you can cut expenses, especially in your discretionary spending like groceries or going out to eat. One way to kind of free up some money, as I like to say, is to use this principle. So it was actually developed by a USU professor, Alina Johnson, and it's a strategy that helps free up some money to either to save or to reduce your debt by gradually reducing spending, as opposed to like cutting something cold turkey. It still allows you to enjoy the things that you like, but maybe doing it in a way that is a little bit more agreeable with the other spending that's going on. Or if you have a savings goal or trying to pay down debt and you're trying to find some money, this is a great principle to consider applying. So we have just like a diagram that if you can, it helps you. I'm a visual person, like to see things. Oh, it's on the next one. That's okay. I'm just going to explain how it works and then I'll show you the visual. You can look at that. So if you can imagine a staircase, right? There's steps. And if you're starting from the top, that is the most expensive option or level of spending. And that could represent anything: entertainment, groceries, eating out. And then it also could be the most expensive way to purchase something in a specific budget category. And then, or it could be also how many times do you spend in that particular category? Like how many times do you go out to eat, or how many times do you go to the movie? You can also use this principle to reduce how many times, the volume or the frequency of the services that you're purchasing. So it's learning how to, there's lots of ways that you can slash expenses. So starting from the top and going all the way down to the bottom would be the least way to still enjoy what you like without sacrificing the fun. And so if, like, again, if you look at that step down principle, the top being the most expensive, the bottom being the least expensive option, or the one that you do the least amount of times. So when you're looking at this, you have to look at starting where am I now? So think about a current spending thing. Let's talk about, I'll give you an example. Let's say I go out, I get takeout, and maybe I do it 5 days a week. So that would represent right now where I am is at the very top. And then I look at going to the very bottom would probably be not going out to eat at all. Maybe I'm focused on paying debt and I'm not going to do takeout or go out to eat. I'm just going to eat, groceries that I purchase. So that would be an example. And so when you step down, you don't have to go all the way down. In other words, you can make small steps. You don't have to go from the very top step to the very bottom step. You could do gradual. Like, for example, I don't have to say I'm not going out to eat at all. I can just say, I'm just going to go out, instead of 5 days a week, I'm going to go out 4 days a week, or get takeout 4 days a week. So that's going to free up some money in my budget, but I'm still able to do the things that I like, that I enjoy doing. So the idea is that you consciously make this decision to step down, which is going to obviously lead you to spend less than you were used to spending or planning on spending. And like I said, the best part about it is you don't have to go all the way down. You could even just do 1 step, 2 steps, and you're going to be able to see the savings and be able to free up that money to do something else that you love to do, or you're saving for, or you're paying down debt. So this is a way to not have to come up with extra income, but just make a small shift in your spending habits and to free up some money to do some other things.
that's a really great way to, like Vincenzo said, free up some of that money, especially when you're trying to spread out that income throughout, from week to week to week. And if some of those spending gets slashed down a little bit, not considerably, but just a little bit, and you'll see that you are able to carry over positive amounts towards the next week and towards the next week again. Another thing that you can do to make the cash flow budget work is to negotiate due dates. Not a lot of people know this, that you can do this. You can change some of your due dates for your bills, and it can help help your budget if it seems like too many of your bills are due at the same time every month. Usually the first of the month or the end of the month is when we see some of these due dates. You can spread big expenses throughout the month, like your mortgage or rent or your car payments, daycare costs, and utilities. And this can help with adequate cash flow to get by without relying on credit cards. Like I said, what most people don't realize is that creditors and even utility companies can change your payment due date. Um, Here, here's a couple of things that you can do. First, you can list all your payments by due dates and by type, and this lets you know your starting point, so you can decide which dates to change. um, of course, you don't want, when you're spreading these due dates out, you also have to make sure that even when they're spread out, you have to make sure that the amounts were also spread out, not just the dates. Check the due dates, and in addition, how the dates line up to when you get paid. Let's say you're paid on the 15th of the month. It might help if you could move your water or maybe your cable bill to a bit later in the month. I'm assuming some of these are not flexible, but if you can pay half on a certain day and then pay the rest of the balance when the due date comes, that can help. Credit card bills, or maybe if you have a payment plan in your car, you can call them and change due dates, especially if you have a good payment history with them. If you're in good standing, they might be more open to adjusting your due dates for you. Call the companies to make sure that you can change the due dates. Don't just assume that, okay, then I'll pay on a different day. You have to call them and you set these new due dates up with them. You can also do a couple other things, like I said. If a due date can't be moved, pay in increments. Okay, if you're getting paid a certain week, then pay half, or maybe every week you put a payment into, you put a certain amount into that payment, so that when the due date comes, you are able to pay in full without having to go in debt, or without having to have a balance there that you're not able to pay. You can do this with other things, not just utility bills. You could do this with childcare costs as well. If the childcare provider is open to doing that. Other things, like even your groceries. If you have a budget of, say, $400 for your grocery for that month, if you find yourself spending all of that $400 in one shopping trip, like your first of the month shopping trip, first week of the month, then you're more likely to be overspending, because then your produce is gone, or your produce went bad, or you're probably buying too much, or you're buying those things that you probably have done some of your impulse buys, and then you have nothing left for the following weeks. So if you could spread that out too, then that will help with your cash flow as well. So that's just a couple of little things that you can do. Like, these things are not big changes that we need to make. We just have to think about how these intentional steps can make those small changes, and then we'll see the big difference in the long run.
Sorry, I was on mute. So we're going to be wrapping things up, and I wanted to open up the chat to, if anybody has any questions. You ask to be unmuted, or feel free to put your question in the chat. We're happy to answer. Or if something that wasn't clear and you'd like a little more clarification on it, we're happy to take a few minutes to explain that a little bit and further. Yeah, absolutely, Eliza. We can email you the cash flow PDF if you want to either do it in a direct mail to the host, a direct message, and we can make sure that we write down your email address and we make a note to send you the cash flow PDF.
Yes, we'll be sending those to everyone
Oh,
who
you will? Okay,
Hey,
awesome.
yes, and we'll make that form fillable so you can make a template of it, you can make a copy of it, open it in an Excel sheet. So that will be available to everyone who attended today.
Awesome. Any other questions? Okay, I wanted to thank everybody for attending today. And I want to just remind you that this program is generously brought to you by grant funding. And so we are required to report our work, and we would love to be able to share what you are learning and plan to as a result of, the feedback that we get from this class. Because we want to improve our courses and we want to provide things that are relevant and useful to you. So if you click here or hold your smartphone up to the QR code and take our 2-minute survey, if you do take the survey, you will be entered into a drawing to win a prize. And we're also putting that in the link in the chat, putting the chat in the link in the chat, so you can have that if you wanted to do that later. We hope this was a great experience for you. We'd love to have you again on future webinars. We have a whole schedule for the rest of this first quarter of the year. You can visit us here at finance.usu.edu/EFW. We are, like JV said, we're on the Empowering Financial Wellness team. You can also join our conversations on social media. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and at Utah Money Moms. And also we have a blog at Utah Money Moms for more financial tips, tricks, and insights. And the next webinar that we're going to be offering is organizational hacks. And the next time we have to pull up the schedule. Nicole is asking, when is going to be the next budgeting hacks webinar? Is it going to be different? Yeah, we try to keep them a little bit different and introduce different hacks and tricks and tips in each one in case people are attending the same ones. You want to have some fresh materials for you that you can pick up we hope you join us for all of our webinars. I always say if you can get one good nugget from spending a little time on something, I feel like it's time well spent. So thank you for being with us today. If there are no further questions before we say goodbye.
Yeah, so I wanted to just reiterate again that we do have other webinars coming up. Our next one is on Thursday, the 21st, right? It's on our financial organization hacks. It's not necessarily a budgeting discussion like this, but it certainly ties in with how you organize your money and your finances. If you are wondering when is our next webinar that's really focused on another budgeting tip, we'll have that first week of February. If you go to finance.usu.edu/EFW, we have a link there for you to register for our webinar series in February, and that will be those will be free like this one, and they will be weekly. So yeah, join us on social media, follow us on Instagram, like our page on Facebook, and join us on the blog for more insights at utahmoneymoms.com.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for being with us today.